the puppies. I'm just going to be completely distracted by any dogs that run past.
You're good. Hopefully they will run up to us while we're on camera. I've had that happen a few times. It's a yes. It is a delight of the show. So let's go. Official start. Puppies. Ooh, have you ever had a dog?
Yes, I have. Growing up.
What kind of dog did you have?
So you ask me a question. It's like, all right, how much of a story do I tell you?
If you're going to a 3-hour one, that would be acceptable.
I was going to say, how long is this supposed to be?
That generally goes around however the flow of the conversation goes. Some go for half an hour, some go for several hours.
Okay.
So very dependent on the flow.
Okay. Speaking of dogs, I do need to get back to my house because I'm watching my friend's dog tomorrow. So he's going to drop the dog off tonight instead of coming over at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, whatever, to drop the dog off. So at some point tonight, I do need to go.
Got you.
Home.
That definitely seems better than waking up half dazed 5 a.m. The dog. Yeah. That's good.
Did you bring me coffee? No, get out.
Damn, that lady was sprinting. There's a lot of goings on if you just sit and watch here. Ooh, did you ever people watch?
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorite things.
How do you do that without being creepy? That's one of the difficulties I have with it. Sunglasses? Do sunglasses help?
Yeah, depending on the day, yeah, sunglasses help. I find that, I have resting bitch face. So when I'm looking at people and it's just like, that's not helping. But, if I'm just, looking around, pretending I'm looking at birds or something.
So watching for them with your periphery?
Yeah. Oh, look at those flowers. That's a lot of clover. Stuff like that.
What do you like to watch with people? I like to watch, the body language, communication, just trying. I've heard people create stories when they look at a person and just kind of play around with it.
Yeah. That was an exercise that one of my friends had. Something that she said that she had done at some point. Just, creating backstories for just random people that she sees. Got this guy with his bike on his laptop over there. So it's like, is he working right now and he's doing a work email, or
is he gaming away?
Yeah. But he just decided to find a sunny spot.
I'm just waiting for him to look up and just see two people with microphones staring at him. So you have to slowly trail your eyes to the side. No, I'm just looking at the tree right next to you. It just looks like I was looking at you.
Trying to identify what sort of, I don't know. The words deciduous and conifer are running around in my head. Words that I have not heard since I was 11.
What's conifer?
It's a type of tree.
Oh, okay.
Deciduous forest, conifer trees, evergreens, I think, are a different type, or I don't know.
It blows my mind how many fucking words exist in the English language that are only used in a very specific realm of expertise. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised if that was the majority of words. That's just a collection of things botanists or chemists use from time to time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll dive in with the topic. What to ask?
Okay.
What's one of the most the most good thing you have ever seen someone do or have done yourself? And we don't even have to go for the pinnacle, the very tippy top. Just something really good that you've seen someone do or that you've done.
I really need to think about that. Because what is good?
Ooh, that's what I'm trying to dig at.
Answer your question with a question.
No, that's honestly something, one of the big reasons I'm trying to dig into this podcast, find out the values of people. But I find just asking people, what do you think good is? You get a lot of cliches. And you can I'm testing out the practice of looking for experiences people have had in their life, because you see a lot of what you find good to be wrapped up in action, or at least this is an idea that I'm testing out, wrapped up in action rather than an articulated thought. So you could say, I don't know, I saw a guy jump in the road and save a homeless guy, and there's so much packed into that maybe wouldn't be difficult to find if I just asked you, what do you think, what are the highest virtues of a human being?
Yeah. Yeah.
So to answer your question of a question with a possible another question, however you define good.
Yeah. Reminds me of something my friend used to ask whenever he met somebody new. There was just a series of questions. And the first question was always vampires or werewolves.
Werewolves.
Yeah. So most people would take that question to be, what do you prefer or what do you like more, vampires or werewolves? But eventually he would get to, why did you assume that was the question? Why did you not think that the question was, who would win in a fight, vampires or werewolves? Or which one has the longest history of mythology, or like the longest hold on human imagination? Like which story, vampires or werewolves, has been around for longer?
Maybe it
werewolves.
taps into... I've heard some really old Native American tribes having stories of werewolves, but the werewolves were people who they kicked out of the tribe, would exile from the tribe, and would end up surviving, or at least there would be legends of them surviving the outskirts, and they would feed on other people, and they would look really feral if anyone ever saw them, and they were stronger than people and faster than the normal person.
Gotcha.
And then you create this whole mythology, and it kind of becomes understandable, like, yeah, that's pretty much a werewolf.
Yeah.
Feral human, but maybe that has to do with people's tribal nature, where they just want to pick a team, like Team Werewolf or Team Vampire. When you ask me, that's just what I'm going to assume.
Yeah, and then, because when he was asking that question, Underworld, one of them, had just come out. And so, yeah, I think the question was who would win in a fight. So then he was trying to make that question, like, generate discussion and, whatever. Because then the other questions were Batman versus Superman. Again, who would win in a fight? Or who's the better superhero?
Superman, obviously. But who's the better is in, like, more entertaining to watch? Maybe Batman. Because there's something in Batman about his raw struggle and the fact that he's not this perfect super being. He has to overcome a lot. And he has a lot of internal struggles that Superman doesn't seem to have.
Yeah, he is human.
Yeah.
That's the appeal of Batman. The last question, or the third question, strawberries or cherries?
I want to say strawberries, but man, when you find a really good cherry, not from the store or in your ice cream that's been processed the hell out of, cherries can be so wonderful.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll say cherry just because I have them less, so there's a kick of delicious rarity to them.
Yep, I'd be on board with that. Yeah. And the last question was, if somebody offered you $1 million to kill some random homeless person on the street, would you do it?
No. But if it was $1 trillion...
I heard that pause.
Yeah.
Million with an M.
It's funny because you reminded me of so many discussions that have been had on school buses about the same thing. Like, what is the minimal amount of money someone would have to pay you before you start to at least consider or pause for a moment about, would I kill a stranger? And there's this one moral standpoint where it's like, no, it's never okay to just kill a stranger. But the fact that there could ever be a pause, and I'm sure a lot of people would actually do it, even if they wouldn't want to admit it, but the fact that it even generates a pause is a very interesting part of humans.
Everybody can be bought. But okay, so to go back to your question, what's the most good I've seen somebody do?
Or have done yourself.
Okay, so I'm thinking about that this whole time we've been talking, and I'm like, how much editing do you do to your podcast?
Very little.
Okay.
All those nice pauses and moments of silence, I savor them. It's perfect. So I like it to feel like a conversation and erase the podcast element.
I would say anybody who can display any amount of empathy, that in itself is good, because it is kindness. And I say that because I've traveled around a lot. I have seen outsiders. And being somebody new who shows up in a spot and not knowing anybody. So, like, I'm an outsider, I'm a stranger, I show up in a city, I know nobody, I have no support system. And anybody who can empathize with that, empathize with being a fish out of water, not being able to speak the language, so you don't know what the street signs say, or you're not sure, where to find a market so that you can buy bread to feed yourself, You can't read a restaurant menu in order to figure out, am I allergic to this? Is this going to kill me, or can I eat it? And then if you need help, if you are in a country where you don't speak the language, you know nobody, and you are told that you might have cancer. Has not happened to me, but...
but if, right?
Yes. I'm drawing examples from my line of work. And so, if you are told that you're going to the doctor and they're trying to communicate to you that pain you've been feeling is a tumor, but you don't know what they're saying, they can't speak your language, If you were to just meet a complete stranger, a random stranger who says, I can help you, I know what you're going through. And so for me to have been in that situation, and now I'm back here in Philly, foreigners tend to gravitate towards me, or outsiders, people who are not from Philly. And so I find that I tend to, I want to say open up, but I'm not sure that that's the right word either. But I can understand what it's like to be in a city where you know nobody, you're a stranger, your dog gets sick, and it's 11 o'clock at night, you're sitting at the emergency room with him, and you literally have not eaten anything since 11 that morning, and you're just so starved. Your dog is pooping blood. What are you going to do? This is an example. A friend of mine, that I had just met, literally 2 weeks before that, he's texting me that something's wrong with the dog and he hasn't eaten, so he's wondering if there's any restaurants in the area, because he's a stranger, he doesn't know the neighborhood, he doesn't know what, he can get on Google Maps, but and so in my head I'm thinking I should offer to bring him food, just get up and go and bring him food, and that does sound like it's kind of tooting my own horn, but
that's fine. That was part of the question, right?
Yeah. It's just, it's that ability to realize that somebody else is struggling. And if you are capable of helping them in any way, wanting to help them and be a friend, be support, I don't know, just to be a kind person in the moment.
That's interesting. I don't know why I'm so full of the love for opposition, but let's see what you make of what I'm about to... Not even opposition, maybe it's more of a dichotomy, trying to figure out the balance between it. Have you ever heard the movie My Left Foot?
No.
A guy is, and this is a true story, paralyzed from everything except his left foot.
Okay.
And, yeah. And when he's growing up, his dad doesn't do really anything for him. He makes him go up and down the steps by himself, feed himself, open doors for himself. And that's obviously incredibly difficult for the kid. It's a lot of moments of deep pain and suffering, and yet the father stands by and lets him, or kind of makes him, become self-sufficient, with the understanding that if I take care of him all the time, he'll become the kind of person who needs to be taken care of. And I'm hit with this rule of thumb in a nursing home that don't do anything for the patients they can't do for themselves, for essentially the same reasoning. Yeah. But there does seem to be a moment where stepping in and helping seems like a good course of action. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, how do you pair those two ideas in your head?
Yeah, you don't want to be doing it constantly, because then the word enabler comes up, and you don't ever want to be an enabler.
That's a tough one.
But yeah, it's what you just said, that don't do for them something that they can do for themselves, and don't do it constantly, so that the other person comes to expect it.
Then they end up needing you as if they grew a third leg and it's you all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say empathy, what do you mean?
I think that's something that people confuse. How people say literally when they mean figuratively?
Yes.
Empathy and sympathy, I think, are two different things. And empathy, what makes somebody empathetic is having had a similar experience that they have been through, and it's like they have personal experience with whatever situation you're going through.
So being in someone else's shoes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Not just putting yourself there, but having been there yourself. Yes. That's a good way to put it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Then I've heard compassion is the ability to relieve someone else's suffering. So empathy is like, okay, I can see their suffering. I know how it's feeling. The compassion is my ability to relieve their suffering. And then so you'd say a virtue of humanity is compassion.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Compassion in the proper context. Oh,
Yeah.
God, here's a horrible idea, but, let's see what you make of it. In World War II in Germany, one of the justifications for euthanation of people that were, quote-unquote, mentally feeble, had mental illnesses and things along those lines, one of the justifications was it's compassionate. You're relieving them of their suffering because they're burdens on themselves, they're burdens on their family, and the society at large. So it's actually, you're doing them a favor by relieving them of this great pain. So it's weird to imagine that even something as beautiful as compassion, right, giving a man $1 on the street when he's hungry, or giving him a sandwich, that there could even be a dark side to that,
Yeah.
That's a strange part of the world. The importance of context. Context.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Huh. When
So that is something to think about.
When my mom came to the U.S., she used to live in the USSR, and because of certain social programs they didn't have homeless people. Or the way she said it, becoming more reflective as she got older, maybe you just never saw them. But growing up, they never had it, and often they would give people jobs and foods when they need it, even though there were many other problems with the system. But her takeaway was when she came to the United States as a kid, and she was walking through a city, she was literally... See, there's one to play. There's a dog eagerly jumping in, ready to play.
You're trying to tell me a very compelling story, and I'm just like giggling because the dog is like grabbing his own leash.
And he looks very happy. He looks like a bundle of joy.
That's all right.
No, you're good. You're good.
Your mother was
That's a worthwhile distraction.
only the dogs, not the people.
So she's walking through a city, and she sees homeless people sleeping on the street, and she's never seen that before. And she's with her friend. She's asking her friend, how do you know these people aren't dead? And everyone's just kind of stepping over them. And it was just this crazy idea. She held so tightly onto her friend's hand because she was afraid that if she tripped and fell, everyone would just keep walking over her as if she's not even there. And that's a strange part of coming through the city. The frequency with which you see a person with no home, with no food. Yeah. Man, that's difficult to pair with compassion.
It is, yes.
Where do you fall on the give $1 or don't give $1 spectrum?
On a practical level,
Yes.
I never have cash on me. So it's
Fair enough.
I have $1 to give.
I give them my good wishes. Why don't you give them your credit card?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only spend $50. I don't want to hit my limit. I'm close. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so then the converse is, or not the converse, but then the follow-up question would be, do I donate money to homeless shelters or food banks or people who are putting in effort to help the homeless in some way? And then you wonder, okay, if I'm going to give $50 to the homeless shelter, why can't I give $50 to Veterans Aid? Why can't I give $50
or
to
people
the
who are
SPCA?
starving in Africa, or to help dogs that are being abused, or to
like
cancer,
this
or to
relief
war,
effort. So it just becomes like, okay.
Practically.
And it seems terrible to phrase it this way, but like you got to find your, not niche, not box, but like your cause, I guess. And like dedicate your efforts, your financial means, whatever it may be, to a handful of things. Otherwise, you're just going to be handing out dollars here and there, and it's not going to make an effort.
And then you're just going to be broke with no potential to help anyone anymore.
Yes, exactly. It's not going to make an effect. Like
That's a strange... then I smell marijuana in the air. That,
Got it.
Are you a fan of the scent?
I mean, if I smell a good strain, yeah. Like, walking down the street, like, I'll be in Center City on, like, 15th, trying to get to, you know, whatever it is, restaurant or bookstore or whatnot. And, like, all these other pedestrians, you're just, like, trying to walk past somebody, all of a sudden you're just, like...
I like the little smirk that came on your face. Yeah. Like, someone's having a nice
like,
time.
Sometimes it's just terrible, and you're just like, oh, dude, like, put that away. But at times you're like, yo, where'd you get that?
Uh-huh. Is it legal in PA yet?
It is decriminalized in Philadelphia.
Gotcha.
So you're not going to go to jail for it, but...
You get like a ticket or something. They finally legalized it in Jersey. I'm so happy.
We... As much as I hate to say it, being a native Philadelphian, we need Jersey to, like, take the first steps, and then Pennsylvania will follow. Like, you guys legalize first, and that's going to encourage Pennsylvania, because they're going to see how many tax dollars they're losing to all of us, like, going over the bridge and Jersey. Yeah, so, like, wait, we need to keep that here, keep all that monies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it just encourages Pennsylvania to follow New Jersey.
Yes. I love there could be a cynical perspective taken on, like, you need to see them that you're losing money before. Why don't you just legalize this beautiful? But I can respect a nice economic incentive working for the good of weed smokers everywhere.
My 11th grade history teacher told me, actually, because back in high school, we had... Oh, is that... Is that going to be a problem?
No, you're good.
Okay. So... Back in high school, we had block scheduling, where for half of the school year, you had 4 classes that were like an hour and a half each, hour and 15 minutes. And then the second half of the school year, you had a different set of 4 classes. So you weren't taking English or math all year, you were taking it for half the year for, like, you know, like block scheduling.
Interesting.
And so when...
Ooh, all I'll ask is, while it is driving by, would you mind keeping it a little closer?
Okay. So... At some point during my junior year of high school, our history, the superintendent or somebody, school board, whoever it was, proposed that they switch it to regular schedule, like 45-minute classes per subject, 8 classes a day, you know, that whole thing. And so said history teacher was the one who... After that school board meeting, when they had high schoolers standing up and giving these, you know, impassioned speeches about how block scheduling prepares us for college per semester, you know.
Impassioned speeches.
Yes, they were. I can picture the people who made those speeches. I can't remember their names now.
Were they like Hitler-esque fire in their soul and brimstone?
Not well.
That may not be the best compare.
It's like some kids were on Adderall, but I don't think anybody was on meth.
Yeah, that's a different type of passion. Anywho.
Yes. So you have students up there, and they're giving these speeches about how their future success relies on block scheduling in high school, you know, all this other stuff. And so our teacher said that doesn't matter. Like, you're getting up in front of the school board and you're telling them that your future success relies on 4 classes a day for 4.5 months. The school board doesn't care. And he's the one who told us you have to have a cynical outlook on life, because if any of those kids had gotten up there and said one of 2 things. One, if you as a school board or the school administration, the superintendent, if you switch from block scheduling to traditional
periods, I think, or
then I'm not voting for you in the upcoming election, or I'm going to tell my parents not to vote for you in the upcoming election, because that's what they care about is school board elections, like staying in power, you know. The second thing he did not hear anybody say was and nobody talked about the economic impact it was going to have. Because instead of having 50 textbooks for 50 students to use for 4.5 months, and then the other 50 students taking this class can use those textbooks for the other half of the year. Now that all 100 students are going to be taking this course, now you need to purchase more textbooks. And you can't just get the textbooks that were published 17 years ago. Now you got to buy 100 textbooks updated because you can't have 50 of them from 17 years ago and 50 of them from now. And so he said somebody should have talked about how it was going to impact taxes with having to hire more teachers to be around at a certain time to be able to teach a higher number of kids at a set time. The cost of textbooks and even reprogramming the school bell to be every 45 minutes instead of every hour and a half, stuff like that. He was like, nobody talked about the economical impact. And so since then, I've had it in my head that, yeah, I do need to look at things cynically, where we live in a capitalist society. We live in the United States. So, like, money talks. Money is what matters. Money is what people care about.
I'm curious, why do you call that cynical?
Because then I want to walk around and talk about compassion and empathy and being kind to people. But at the same time, it's like, well, nobody cares about that. People only care about the bottom dollar. And so you might think that it would be naive to sit here and say, oh, the world should be good. Everybody should be thinking about each other. But not everybody is. I mean, hot button topic, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. Like, so many people are calling them out for having all these riches and doing what with it? Fuck all. Like, they're not bettering humanity in any way. Some people would argue that they are, but, you know. They did everything. They got rich by being dicks, by forgetting empathy and compassion and just
Why do you say
focusing on
that?
the dollar.
Why do you say they became rich by forgetting about compassion?
If you look at Amazon workers and what they struggle with, can't unionize, can't even go to the bathroom if they're working on the factory floor, packaging all the boxes. I forget which state it was, but last year or earlier this year, when there were tornadoes and they were told to go back to work, like, don't leave the factory, you're going to lose your job if you leave. Well, some of them lost their lives. And it's like, they're trying to unionize, they're trying to make their work conditions better, but Bezos and the people who call the shots there are pretty much saying, no, fuck you. Like, so, yeah.
That is a tough one. To pair it with
This
what
is the conversation you wanted to have.
Yeah, fuck yeah. As I call the podcast, the spirit of a nation. So let us dive into our spirits and the spirits of what we see. What we were talking about earlier, this ties into it in my mind in a strange way. When we're talking about why don't we just spend all our time dedicating it to this cause and that cause and the other cause? Why do we spend any time at all watching a TV show and enjoying it, or hanging with a friend and shooting the breeze, or having a nice cup of coffee or fast food or seeing a movie? Why don't we spend all our time doing that? And is that a flaw in human nature, or is that simply our nature for both good, bad, and indifferent, and it's something to be worked with? And then I remember someone talking about Elon Musk and the Teslas, and they said, in their opinion, part of the genius of a Tesla is that it's not trying to sell you the car based on it being good for the environment. Kind of like, I take that as a Prius model. You buy this car and you're helping the world and you're helping the future and all these wonderful rah things, and yet Tesla is now, I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, American car companies in America, and they have electric cars, which will in turn end up helping the future, but the main reason people tend to buy them is because they're cool cars,
Yeah.
right? Like, you get it and you enjoy personally in your own life that you're having it. They have a lot of toy-like functions, they look really cool, this, that, and the other, and then as a side thing, they happen to help the future, and they said that Doggos. And then now I'm enjoying these interactions. Teslas, cars, things. Oh yeah, that it's helping people in the future through understanding and working with the selfish side of human nature. And it makes me wonder. I've heard Bezos say it, and he might have just been saying this to sound good on an interview, which would, fair enough for making that argument for anyone who does. But he said, my top goal is customer service. To provide the best possible thing for the customer as I can. That's my main thing. That's what I love to do. And in a strange way, I can see the discomfort and the suffering that the workers endure makes the customer experience more enjoyable. And definitely dying for a tornado so I can get my package 20 hours earlier than I would have. That does not seem like an optimal way to move forward with humanity.
Yeah, because then the question is, well, if you don't like Amazon's practices like that, then stop buying from them. And it's like, who's going to give up on Amazon? Like, who's going to stop buying stuff from Amazon? No one.
I don't know. If it got as serious as, for example, the buses during the civil rights movement, where you could ask someone, who's going to stop riding the bus? Like, how are you going to get places? But enough people ended up boycotting the bus system that they ended up having to change their ways, right? Yeah. And then it was war of attrition. Who's willing to suffer more for this? But it doesn't seem like a lot of people are willing to suffer for the Amazon thing at the moment. And frankly, I don't even know very much about it. And I do order things from Amazon, and I enjoy the convenience in the packages.
So where do you get it delivered to? Because you live in a van.
Often I'll have it delivered to my parents' house, so when I stop by there, I'll pick up the packages.
Yeah. That's what you gotta do. Yeah. I will often have stuff sent to my parents because I live in the city. Amazon's just going to charge me the 8% sales tax, but my parents live in another county, so they get the 6%. So just deliver it there.
Nice.
Like, if it's something I can wait for, like wait until the weekend, I can drive out there and get it.
Okay, so this isn't... I don't want to come off as like finger waggy. No. This is pure curiosity. I want to say, how do you pair the criticisms and the negative side of Amazon with actually purchasing things from Amazon?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it, and yeah, I knew that this is going to come because it's like, all right, you're railing about Amazon and the evil of Jeff Bezos, but you admit to still purchasing from them, right? Yes. Yes. I did try it over Christmas with buying Christmas gifts for all of my family. I didn't really tell anybody, but I just made it a personal point to go Amazon free. So if somebody says, oh, I'd like this, like they send me their wish list, they send me the link to Amazon, and then I'll go try to find it somewhere else on Etsy, on, Redbubble or Zazzle or whatever it was. That
someone who's not making their truck drivers poop into bags while they drive around.
Yes. Yeah. So I did try to make it a point to shop non-Amazon stores. But then when it comes to home improvement, like the stuff around the house that I'm trying to do to make my house my home and like make it cozy and livable, like there's just Amazon prices. Like, I am a cheap bastard, so like, if I find something on Amazon for $5 that like some other website is selling for $20, I'm gonna be like, well, the quality's the same.
$20. Yeah.
$20. Well, $15 with like the difference between the two. So, yeah, I mean, and this is the problem. Like going for the cheaper option and just feeling like this is your only or your best option to get something is to go through Amazon. And so
there's a great pain that would come with being Amazon free, for sure. Have you ever watched Naruto or read it or anything? A show. I'll give you a quick rundown of this deep moral question in the show. This character is put in this fucked up situation where he can either kill his whole clan to stop the equivalent of a world war going down, or he can side with his clan and then likely also start a world war. But if he kills his whole clan, he avoids the world war. And so he ends up killing his whole clan except for one person. He couldn't bring himself to kill his little brother in the clan, even if his little brother ended up growing up to be someone who would destroy and start a world war.
Starting to sound familiar.
And it brings this interesting question, and it's what we were talking about earlier, going circular with it. This idea of, okay, what humans truly care about most, oftentimes that seems to be personal things in our own life directly.
Yeah.
And we can make little changes. You know, I've turned my lights off more often. Not have my car on idle now for pollution reasons and things along those lines, but I still use it. You know, I still buy my phone, even though I've heard a lot of the resources require slave labor and really fucked up labor practices in other country. But I still buy my smartphone for all the reasons of convenience that come along with it.
Yeah.
And it just leaves me with so many question marks in my head. Like, what is the right thing to do here? Yeah. What's the most worthwhile way to live? Do you regret at all buying from Amazon? Or is it just kind of like, bless you, you're good? And let me know if this is too heavy, because I could.
No. Yeah, because it's one of those things where it's like, some people say that it has to be a personal choice, or you need to think about things and how you feel about it, versus other people who say, no, we all need to band together and we all need to make a statement together. You know, protests and boycotts versus self-reflection. So, yeah, you do have people who think about this situation or about any situation and say, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. And they can sit there and think, and they say, well, for me, because I'm broke, I have no option except to, you know, go to Walmart and pay, you know, for the Walmart brand, store brand, whatever, versus going to a corporation that is less problematic and buying the same product for twice the amount.
Mm-hmm.
But then other people will say, if just one person and someone else who thinks they're just one person and someone else who thinks they're just one person all to get together, and they do this boycott of the buses, then they can change. Mm-hmm. They can affect, you know, the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm. What is it? The ocean's made up of a bunch of droplets, or the ocean will be lesser for one drop of water, something like that.
Yeah. And then
that brings me back to what we were talking about, the middle school speeches, and that if you're going to speak to convince someone of something, there's a very great book on topics like this called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the book in this particular sort of question emphasizes talk from that person's perspective, right? If you're trying to convince someone of something, you have to speak in terms of what they have to gain or lose, them specifically. And when it comes to trying to convince people for not buying from Amazon and things like that, should you take everybody to the factories that people are being abused at? Should you take them to labor camps in Africa where they're getting the minerals, where they're slaves? It's fuck.
And you wonder if that is a result of just the world that we live in now, where you are able to just stay in your house, like live your entire house as a recluse, live your entire life in your house as a recluse. You can order your groceries and have them delivered or take out.
Live in that bubble.
Yeah, like everything can be ordered online and shipped to you and sent to you. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to, try to get anybody to see a different point of view in that sense.
Damn. And then I hear arguments like these countries going through industrialization, even though a lot of these jobs are shitty by our standards that they're being given, it's it tends to boost their economy, which is what will bring them to a state more like America, where you're not as likely to work in that. So this is just the growing pains to get them there. I don't know how true that is, but there's something to be said for that argument. Maybe we should just go live in the woods.
Everyone go off grid.
Yes. There's like a desirable aspect to that. I've thought about that before, more just playing around with the idea where you go and self-sustain to the degree that you can. You hunt your own food, you grow your food, you get your own logs for the fire, you build your tree from logs, and then, but it's so appealing to be living in this, right? Electricity, internet.
Yep. Yeah. Living a life like that, where your entire day is spent on tasks, chores that are necessary to your survival.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And then even then, right, to hunt, to live, you're still killing. You're still killing an animal. And then there's a moral question with that. And then you get to this understanding of, well, maybe just to eat at all, it requires there's some degree of evil you have to have within you just to survive. And that doesn't mean you have to be overall evil. Maybe you can find a way to be good despite this evil part of you. But to know that you have that in you, and maybe evil is not the right word for it, but you kind of see what I'm saying? Like the yin to the yang within ourselves, that there's no real absolute good way to live. There's a best way to live, I bet, and a really good way, overall good, where you don't regret it in the final analysis. What do you think of anarcho-primitivism? If you've heard the...
I think I've only heard the first 3 syllables of that. What?
Yeah, it's called anarcho-primitivism. My friend was promoting this point, and the point is essentially for humans to not self-destruct with technological improvement. We need to go back to our old hunter-gatherer roots, and maybe not in a very extreme way where we're getting rid of everything, but there needs to be some sort of conscious going back, using less technologies, things along those lines. And then on top of all this, there's just the joys of living a simple life.
Yeah.
Where should you really demand someone to do more than that, than just, having friends, having some passions you like, from time to time donating to these causes, and just kind of living your life.
Yeah. If you're living in the mountains, living off the grid somewhere, how would you get down here to go to yoga on the banks?
And is that not a beautiful thing? Even though it used the technology of the man, and you all use your smartphones that promoted child labor to get to this yoga on the banks, but damn, it's pretty beautiful coming to yoga on the banks.
Yes, it is. So you have to think about your experiences, the things that you do for survival, the things that you do for leisure, for pleasure, for some sort of intellectual pursuit, to learn, to...
What's your dream life look like? Like 4 years down the road, realistically speaking, right? You don't have superpowers and 30 super yachts. I mean, maybe you could get super yachts, but I'll leave that up to you to find what realistic is. The best life.
I wouldn't say that it would be any different than what I'm doing now. It's just, I'm thinking about that first conversation we had where you asked, like, what have I found about people as I travel around the world? Like, what are my answer to that was, despite all the differences, like, people are still the same. People want to have a good life. They, want to have food on the table. They want to have friends to hang out with, or be left alone to, watch TV and play solitaire. Like, whatever it is, like, people just want to have contentment. Let's put it that way. So, yeah. Right now, I have a job that I don't hate. I actually do like it.
That's beautiful.
Find fulfillment in what we do.
What do you do at the moment?
I work for an interpretation company.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me now.
Yeah. And, I have friends that I hang out with. We go out, watch movies, eat dinner, do random stuff in the city, and I am a city girl, so, like, yes, I will go out bird watching, but on the other hand, I'd rather, like, go to Center City Sips or something. Or, go to the Academy of Music for a ballet or something. So, yeah, my ideal life 4 years from now, probably just more of this.
Yeah? Fuck yeah.
Having friends, going out, doing things that are fun. And not stressing too much about anything else going on. Yeah,
simple and clean. No, I like it. That is something I've been wrestling with lately in my own life, trying to figure out what would be a good life to be living. And all these questions are popping in my head that we've been talking about. Should I be focusing on these big, grand problems? And a lot of me just wants to live the kind of life you're talking about. Hang out with friends for part of it. A little bit at the time, do some donation and focus on it. But the majority, maybe play solitaire or whatever my equivalent is. See some ballets, go for some hikes.
Yeah.
Just breathe in the air, be in the moment.
Yeah. Looking at all these people that have been passing us. Some people strolling, some people running, some biking. Like some you can tell they're working out, like they're pursuing some sort of fitness goal. Other people are in pairs, so maybe they're just doing this because this is the only time the two of them can get together and talk, like because they've been friends for however many years. Other people, I think I just saw Penn cross-country team run past us. So, earlier. The group of 20 college kids that just ran past. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was college. So yeah, like that social aspect of being part of cross-country team. So yeah, it's having a picnic over there.
Smoking some weed, hanging with your dog and some friends. Yeah. Oh, okay. Now I'll go to the boom, 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 darker side. Okay, so 4 or 5 years down the road, what would be the worst future if you were to fall short in all the ways you feel like your particular weaknesses were to gain the upper hand? And yeah, what would that life kind of look like to the degree you're willing to share?
To be honest, other than losing my job due to poor performance on my part, I would think the only ways, or what would lead to some, what am I trying to say? It would have to be external factors that would create some sort of terrible life for me. And I'm thinking right now of politics, of the November elections. If the wrong person gets elected to be governor, if the wrong person is elected to be senator of this state, I'm not talking about like any other races, but yes, what goes on in Georgia does impact Pennsylvania. What goes on in Pennsylvania does impact what goes on in, Idaho.
Oh my God, I forgot Idaho was a state for a second. That's one I don't hear the name of very often. Anyway.
So, you just have to wonder, like, in light of what happened last week, you just think...
The Roe v. Wade?
Yeah. These are things outside of my control, because I can get out there, I can stump for Fetterman or Shapiro, but what if the other guy wins? What if the worst guy wins? And what if they go nuclear and just bulldoze over everything and just ruin our way of life. Like taxes go up and all of a sudden I can't afford my house anymore. Like I can't afford the mortgage or the property taxes or anything like that. Like I've only had it for a year, so something somebody else does, a decision that somebody else makes impacts me, that then makes me homeless. And then I have to like move out to my parents' house where I don't have any friends in like a 20-mile radius. So then like I lose my social life and my ability to spontaneously go out for dinner at some restaurant that's actually going to be open at 10 o'clock in the evening because nothing stays open past 7 in suburbia.
Oh.
So yeah, you just think like, okay, the quality of life that I have right now, the contentment with life that I have right now can be affected by somebody else's political motivations and the way that they vote. And
I guess two questions to that. Do you see those as likely? And do you think there's anything you can do to avoid that?
Six years ago, did any of us think that it was likely Trump was going to win?
Me and my circle, no. But there were circles out there that I was probably just not speaking with that were very confident.
Yeah, like you live in an echo chamber. Like you surround yourself with people who think the way that you do, who are just as outraged about things as you are. And of course, everyone's going to be like, yeah, there's no way this guy's going to win. Like, no way. And so you don't think about, well, if he does win, then like here's the domino effect. Roe v. Wade. Like, as soon as he got elected, we all saw this coming. Well, not we all, but a lot of us did see this coming. But at that time, it was always like, oh, that's not a possibility. That's not likely. But he did. And it did become a reality. And I remember standing in the parking lot of my job at that time. I got out of my car. My coworker was down a few spaces over. She gets out of her car, and we just lock eyes. And I just start screaming, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck?
Wait, was that when you found out he was elected or during the Roe v. Wade?
Yeah, the next day. And somebody else who worked in the building, stranger to us, but she was out of her car and she heard me screaming, and she kept turning around and looking at me like giving me dirty looks. I'm like, are you not outraged at this? Because this is the beginning of the end for a lot of things. So, do I think it's likely? We can't discount the possibility because we've already seen.
Oh, I'll ask a funny attempt to break an echo chamber-esque question. What is the strongest argument you can give for voting for Trump? What is the steel man of voting for Trump you could give? If you search into your deepest heart of hearts.
Like my best attempts at playing devil's advocate right now?
Yes.
Of trying to see it from the other guy's point of view.
So put on the shoes for a second.
I think his argument that he wasn't a career politician did resonate with a lot of people. And the idea that I'm not even sure if what I'm about to say is true, but the idea that he wasn't going to be influenced by the lobbies, that he wasn't stumping for big oil or the tobacco companies.
Because he's rich, he can fund himself, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people seeing him on TV saw this take no shit attitude, and they thought he was going to be like that with senators, with congressmen.
The badass 80s movie action hero.
Right, yeah. And so, yeah, I think that was a message that a lot of people latched onto, that they thought because he was different, he was an outsider, he was going to rock the boat, shake things up a little bit.
Career politician. It's interesting. I've heard that brought up a few times. What do you think is a negative? Why do you think it would be a negative to be a career politician in someone who voted for Trump's eyes?
the lobbyists. In order to advance in your career, you need money. So who's giving you money? All these corporations, the whatever industries, the pharmaceutical industry, whatever you want to name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've all got your hands in each other's pockets and in each other's wallets. And so instead of listening to what Americans want and what your constituents want and making policy changes, making decisions based on what is good for your community, instead, you know, you're from Idaho, you're surrounded by potato farmers, and here comes some dude from Texas who says, I got a lot of oil money. I'll give it to you if you vote against, or if you vote for this pipeline that's going to go through South Dakota. And like, what are you, as a potato farmer, or your neighbors are potato farmers in Idaho, like, I am extremely simplifying these things, because yes, obviously potato farmers in Idaho need oil lines or
I get what you're
ship
saying.
their potatoes
Let's say
off,
in
like,
the circumstance where a pipeline would ruin their potato business.
Yes.
In some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
And then, okay, well, I need money to promote my campaign, and once I get that money, well, then I'll start to help them, but first I need to agree with this one lobbyist, and then I've heard that being a dangerous, slippery slope, many politicians.
Yeah, because then at what point do you say, all right, like, I have enough, and you put your hand back, like, you stop sticking it out for more donations?
Have you heard of the invisible primary?
No.
The invisible primary is after every election, or before big presidential election cycles, the primary funders for the GOP or the DNC will meet up with the heads of the GOP and DNC, and essentially they discuss the strategy for next year. Like, okay, how do we do this year? What were the pros and the cons? How do we do better next year, etc.? Which doesn't sound malicious, and, you know, that's a different conversation, but they have this conversation and they'll look at the candidates who are running, like, who's going to be a good lineup for this year to help promote XYZ cause. Oh, okay, then we'll pick this person as the top funders and the tops of these leaders of these political groups. And, you know, then that person will get a little bit, well, maybe not even a little, a lot more funding and support from the party and their donors, which will in turn get them more news attraction, which will then build a positive feedback loop of them getting more news, more donations from more people hearing about them, more. And so there's the idea of people being elected before the common citizen even gets a say in the matter.
Yeah.
The invisible primary. Yeah. And that is an argument I've heard for elections not being fair, to throw away the concept of people stealing votes and this and the other. Like, no. What about this huge glaring problem in the presidential candidates that we have come to power? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of funny because Trump was not a part of those conversations. Oh, I imagine.
Yeah.
And
I think why. Again, 2016, living in my echo chamber, quite a few people were upset about Clinton getting the nomination over Sanders.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I heard she, like, karate kicked his legs out from under it. And I heard, which is a very interesting part, that the DNC is supposed to be non-biased towards the people running, but then in private emails, the DNC leaders were actually promoting Hillary and agreeing to promote her over Sanders.
Yep. And so, yeah, that's probably what you're talking about then, the invisible primary, where they just said, like, sabotage all of Sanders' efforts despite having a lot of support behind him.
Yeah. And it's questions like these, especially that seem so directly impacting to our lives. Like, ooh, should I start to get, how big of a problem is politics in America? Because that's one of the big reasons I started the podcast, is a fear about political tensions rising and all that sort of jazz, which seems more like a reality TV show than it does a reality at the moment, which is another freaky part of it.
Yep.
I
know that they're showing a movie up on Sarah Green. I'm just wondering what movie it is.
Oh, that's what that is. I thought that was like a marching band.
Yeah, no, they have movie night up there. I'm not sure if it's free or if you have to pay tickets or at least register because they can only hold so many.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that looks badass. And on top of a parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Sierra Green. It's green. It would tell you that it is kind of a park, so dogs are allowed up there. I've gone up there to stargaze a couple times when the planetary conjunction this past winter. Sorry, not this past winter, the one before that.
Oh, so there's a group of people that go up there to stargaze?
Individuals will go, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the light pollution, you can still see it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you put me on the stargazing wave. Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot of cool shit to that. All these grounded problems aside, it's amazing to to just look up and be in awe for a second. To just kind of be reminded of maybe how much we don't know, the incredible amount of wonder and mystery to the world. Yeah. Like, yeah, there's all these intense problems and stuff going on, but then you can go and look up to the stars and remember maybe how small it all is.
Yep.
You ever see the picture of the pale blue dot?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I love Carl Sagan's quote about it
mm-hmm.
as well. Yeah.
Every war, every great man that's ever risen and fallen. I'm butchering the quote. I'm not even going to finish it. But yeah, all happened on this pale blue dot.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. It does strike me quite often, yeah, when I'm looking out into space. Every once in a while, you know, I catch the Andromeda Galaxy. I'm just looking at it, I'm like, it's so far away. That is so far away. We are tiny in comparison to everything that's out there. We are.
Which is hilarious because I've heard physicists say if that depresses you too much, then you can look on the more microscopic atomic scale and then realize that you're the relative size of a planet to some of the things that exist on really small scales. And then within all that vastness of huge and tiny things, us.
Yeah.
And then somehow looking at a dog and playing with a dog feels really important within all this cosmos and mystery. That's a great highlight of life, huh? Yeah.
Absolutely.
How peculiar, this thing we call life.
How deep does your podcast get?
It's
like, what kinds of questions?
Sometimes super deep, but sometimes I like to remind myself of what it's like to have a conversation that isn't a podcast. And I need to work on that muscle because I've noticed it can get a bit tiring and draining to just talk about heavy topics. And sometimes it's nice to just talk about lighter things. That's a muscle I need to work on more. What do you like small talking about? Teach me
so
some
vampires versus werewolves.
Yes, definitely. See, like fun little goofy questions like that can make up a really fun conversation. All right. Yeah. I'll ask the classic one. A superpower you can pick. Oh, okay, I'll say it like this. You can either touch someone and heal them from essentially any wound, or you can really regenerate yourself, kind of like Deadpool, or turn invisible.
Those are my three choices?
Yes.
Either heal other people, regenerate myself, or turn invisible. I don't know. I would be caught between wanting to heal other people, and that would be the whole wanting to be kind, wanting to spread good in the world, versus regenerating myself, because then I wouldn't fear doing anything. I wouldn't fear any risks, the consequences of going skydiving or...
You don't even need a parachute.
Yeah. That's something my grandfather made a joke about when he was in paratrooping school. He was in the Marines, you know, getting ready to deploy out into the Pacific.
Was this World War
War II, yeah. And you know, they sent them all to paratrooping school and, you know, practicing jumping out of a plane with a parachute. And so my grandfather's comments about that was, why do we have to practice something that we absolutely have to get do it right the first time. Otherwise, we're dead.
I hope they teach you how to open it before you're actually like jumping. Can I get a couple test pulls in before I'm plummeting to the earth?
You pull it this way. You have to like.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's got the first time doing that by yourself. Because I can just imagine it's so simple. You just pull this one, not that one. That's the reserve. But then you're panicking and you kind of get confused. Well, have you ever gone parachuting?
I have not. I have jumped off a bridge with a bungee cord. I have jumped off a bridge without a bungee cord.
Oh my God, you told me that where you almost died, where you belly flop from like 80 feet.
Yes. Still have not told my mother about that one.
I hope she watches. Hello. Oh my God, those guys are just standing on the front of that train.
Yep.
That sounds fun.
So, yeah, do I want to heal other people and be helpful, or do I want to be selfish and, do something that would allow me to feel like I'm really living, to like, not have to worry about the consequences and actually, I don't know.
And you could be helpful when you regenerate a lot. It's not as obvious, right? But you technically,
Yeah, I'd be like, no way. You don't go into that burning building to go save that baby.
I got you,
I'll come back out and regenerate my skin or whatever.
But that is the idea of all the fun things you get to do with that. That's a really compelling. Maybe I'm a bad person for how compelling that is, and maybe I should be more a saintly character. But fuck that. I want to be able to do parkour, no problem. Do fighting, no worries.
Broken bone,
give it a few minutes.
Yeah. I think, I'll go with regeneration. Yeah.
Were you big into fiction at all?
What kind?
That was going to be my follow-up. If yes, what sorts of fiction are your...
I will fully admit, I love Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie. So, like, murder mysteries... Historical fictions are also pretty fun. Although I tend to limit myself on that because not all historical fiction is accurate.
Like you can get a misrepresentation of what actually happened in history, and you're walking around all confident, like, I know what's up.
Right, yeah. So then I don't know what's real, like what's fact, what actually happened. And I noticed this actually with The Great on Hulu about Catherine the Great. And there are so many historical inaccuracies with that show. I just turned it off halfway through the first episode. I was like, I don't want to confuse myself and think that what happened here was fact. I'd rather just like remember what actually did happen according to the books I've read. So, but
that gives me, I feel you, that
fun.
gives me struggles with learning about, there's this book, Musashi, and it goes over historical fiction telling of one of the greatest swordsmen in all of Japan. And I like to read it and think that I know a thing or two about Japan, but there's a little part of me that cries at the thought that, what if this is all bullshit? And it's just some fanboy's essentially rewritten fan fiction story of the reality of it. Yeah. Sherlock Holmes. What did you think of the movie?
The movie?
With Robert Downey Jr.?
I did think that those were not necessarily more accurate, but more faithful to the source. Like, I really don't like... I know I'm inviting a lot of hate with this. I do not like the BBC Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch.
How dare you?
Because I find him to be so much of an asshole unnecessarily. Whereas in the books and the Robert Downey... I mean, okay. The Robert Downey Jr. versions did show Sherlock to be a bit more suave than... Oh.
So in the books, what is he like? Because I've never read them, but I am interested.
Before I get to Sherlock, I will say that Watson's portrayal in the movies was more accurate. Like, a lot of people had this idea of Watson being this short, fat, bumbling idiot, but he was not. He was fully capable, and I do like that they cast Jude Law in that role.
He was a badass role. I feel like it's the only person that can keep up with Sherlock. You need to be a badass.
Yes. So I like the movies, purely because I liked Watson in that. So then in the original books, I mean, yeah, Sherlock, he did have an ego. There were subjects that he didn't know about, like he was not into astronomy. Like somebody had to tell him once that the Earth revolves around the sun. But for him, like that's just not a fact that would help him in any of his investigations. And he thought that the brain was a finite vessel. So if you remember one fact, you had to get rid of another fact in order to absorb that. So if a fact was useless to him, he wasn't going to take up precious space in the drawer of his brain.
So he's super obsessive, loves to wrap his life around the investigations. Why does he do the investigations? Is it for the love of the hunt, or is it for some moral justice reason? Or some other reason?
I think it was just the problem solving for him.
Like the love of problem solving. That's a fucking thing that gets me about the people who are the best at a thing. Because I've heard some people who are the best at a thing say you have to love it in order to be the best. Which is a really interesting concept, like pairing what we were talking about earlier. Should you do it out of some guilt or shame, and maybe there's some utility to that, but in order to be the best, maybe it would be better to focus on the things you love doing and dive deeply into that and just trust your passion to guide you true. Just follow your heart. But I don't know, maybe that's just a corny cliche.
Yeah.
But you look at someone like Sherlock Holmes, why is he so cool? Because he fucking loves it.
Yeah, putting effort into it, like, he is a genius. He was addicted to cocaine, and then he was prescribed morphine to break that addiction, which also led to some problems.
Morphine addictions?
Yes. Yes.
Was there a trauma in Sherlock Holmes, a pain to him that drew him to these addictions, perhaps? He just lacked cocaine?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that, like, there have been attempts at, giving him his backstory, his origin story, and stuff like that, but I don't think there was anything...
all that super deep behind it.
I was going to say, like, there's no PTSD that he was trying to get over. Like, there was no childhood abuse or trauma or something. Like,
hey, some people just like coke.
Somebody gave him some once, and he was like, oh, that's kind of good.
Uh-huh.
And he just, like...
That definitely fits the personality I have for him in my head.
Yeah,
someone who's like, go, 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 go.
Yeah, like somebody who has an addictive personality to the point where they have to study all 75,000 different types of soil found on the British Isles, so that he knows exactly when a shoe, the criminal shoe, picks up some soil from here and walks 75 miles that direction, and then he finds the soil over here. He knows exactly where that person came from.
I like that. I gotta read some fucking Sherlock Holmes.
I would start with The Valley of Fear, or the Four Orange Pips. Those are pretty cool. I mean, those are novels. Maybe the short stories would be better, actually. Ease into it a little bit.
Is it a chronological thing, or is like a buffet, you just jump in wherever you like?
You can read them definitely out of order. There are occasional times, because almost all of them were narrated by Watson. So sometimes he'll be like writing about one case, and then he'll mention something that happened another time. But not reading that prior case doesn't mean that you're going to miss out on anything. And this one, it's just like, he was playing the violin that was given to him by somebody. Does
he also do badass kung fu in the books? Because that was one of my favorite parts, where he would play through all the fight moves before he did it.
Yeah, he was a boxer, a fencer, a good swordsman. Watson had the gun, so yeah.
Guns beat karate every time.
I mean, he was a veteran. He was in Afghanistan. That's how the two of them met, when he came back from Afghanistan in the whenever it was, protecting the British interests over there. Needed a roommate or needed a place to live, and somebody introduced him to this guy who has an extra room, or lived in Mrs. Hudson's house. There's an extra room.
Oh, because the relationship with Mrs. Hudson is great. In the book, does she also hate him, or in the movie, does she also hate him in the book?
No. No, didn't.
Oh, okay. Is he also very eccentric in the?
Yeah. Wandering around in his dressing gown or his bathrobe or whatever. And yeah, he would leave at 3 o'clock in the morning, not come back for 4 days. Because he was off, like, disguised as a chimney sweep trying to get engaged to some girl to get information out of her.
Wait. He was disguised as a chimney sweeper to try to get engaged to a girl to get information out of her.
Yeah,
he tried to get engaged in 4 days.
Yeah, there was
I heard that happened more back in the day.
Where he needed to gain information from somebody in the household. So in order to do that, he started courting the housemaid and, you know, won over her affections.
Oh, just for the case that's cold.
So that she would share information with him. And, you know, he could convince her to, like, let him in the house or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've read all of them, but yes, I'm a fan of Sherlock Holmes.
Ooh, my favorite villain, in the second Sherlock Holmes, do you remember Moriarty.
Yep.
What's he like in the books?
Very similar, where it's, I forget who plays him in the movie. But yeah, it's the way that Sherlock describes him in the movie is the same as in the book, where he is the spider at the center of the web, and all he needs to do is just be like tug, and then it just sets off like this whole crime syndicate all over, you know, half the continent or something.
God damn. It's crazy to look at someone like Epstein and recognize that things like that happen in real life. It's not just a fictional fantasy like, no, that's so crazy. That would never happen in real life. Like, oh shit, in the underbelly of a city. Like, it's weird to think as we look around the city and we're here on this nice peaceful park, everyone's walking around, you know, having a good time, harmony. It's weird to also imagine that there's an underbelly. Like, there are crime syndicates in the city. I bet there are mob bosses, I assume, people who run that underground world that I have really no connection to. And yet I'm sure it plays a pretty big role in what happens in the city.
Yeah.
Have you ever tapped into, I don't know, the dark side, the criminal underworld in any of your travels, even if it was just for a moment, or just in your life in general? Have you ever touched that part of society?
Okay, you're making me run through all of my travels in, like, chronological order. Like, have I? I don't think so.
Would I have to blur your face and name if you tell me?
I mean, there's been more than one guy I've gone on a date with who was like 70% convinced that I was in the CIA or something based on how much traveling I had done.
Now I'm convinced. Now you've planted the seed and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, none of that. No.
Have you ever been somewhere where it played a big role in, like, the lives people lived?
Okay, so when I was doing a semester in Korea, we actually went into North Korea for a visit to the Diamond Mountain Range.
Now, hold on. Was this like you're standing on the border, or you literally went into...
Went into North Korea, yeah. Like, past the border. It wasn't...
This was for college?
Yeah.
It's an intense college you went to.
Because I was studying at Yonsei, and the professor of our Intro to North Korean Politics class was the advisor to the South Korean president on North Korean affairs, and so, like,
connections.
Adjunct faculty, I think is what it's called. Where, yeah, he would teach this course in addition to his regular duties. And so he had mentioned that we would take a field trip to the Diamond Mountains, Kumgansan. He said it in Korean, and, you know, like, half the kids were like, where? The other half who, like, understood Korean were all like,
Did it have a dark air, like the room got quiet when he said it? Like saying Voldemort?
just some confusion.
Okay.
But, you know, so then he asked for some student volunteers to actually organize the trip, because it turns out he couldn't go on that weekend that we had decided on, you know, whatnot. So, long story short, we went on a weekend where there was a celebration going on.
Wait, how do you organize a entry into North Korea? That seems like the most secluded, impossible to get to.
We had some help from one of the corporations that was running the I'm going to say resort. It was not a resort, but that's the word I'm going to use because it was that controlled and like that insulated. And
Wait, you said you're calling it a resort because it was very controlled and insulated?
yes. Like,
what kind of resorts do you go to? I usually have a more relaxed vibe in the
because for us, we weren't allowed outside of this. Any movement outside of it was with an escort on the bus. All the food was here. You can't just leave to go find a restaurant anywhere. And so I'm thinking of resorts in Mexico or Jamaica where you have this enclave of luxury surrounded by barrios and favelas or whatever you want to call them in whichever language. Surrounded by poverty, and that's what it was. The resort wasn't that luxurious. It was a boat on the middle of a lake where they pulled up the drawbridge at night so that you can't leave the boat in the middle of the night and sneak off anywhere. So we went there on a celebration weekend, and we were done with the touring for the day. We ended up at this other hotel, and there were a bunch of Communist Party members up on the top floor of the hotel in one of the luxury restaurants. And they were like toasting and celebrating for the celebration that was going on. And this group of like 44 of us ended up singing karaoke with these guys. And they were just buying us shot after shot of like super expensive whiskey that they can afford, that they were, permitted to have or snuck in illegally. I don't know. So that might be my closest encounter with
karaoke on a boat with
North Korean Communist Party members. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how does one... in a moment like that, are you even thinking about the atrocities of North Korea? Are you just like, oh, this is kind of cool. We're singing karaoke. This is fun.
Well, for me, in my head, I'm just thinking, my grandma wanted some currency. She wanted, if I could find it, she wanted a banknote of North Korean currency. Because she was born in Pyongyang. And
is that a place in North Korea?
yeah, current capital of North Korea. Capital of what is currently North Korea.
Would another pronunciation be Pyongyang? Is that... No, I might be thinking of something else. Anyway.
Yeah, the way that it's written in English, the last syllable, Y-A-N-G, yang.
Gotcha.
In Korean, it's yang.
Yang, Pyongyang.
Cool. Wondering how many of these are going to go through, and they're all going the same direction.
Let's see. It doesn't sound terrible in the headphones.
Okay. But yeah, so Grandma being born in what is now North Korea, just wanted some random souvenir that she could look at and think about home, her childhood, whatnot. So as we're like going through all this, I was not nearly as drunk as everybody else was.
Was that by decision or just accident? Was it like you just kind of want to have your wits about you? Or was it like, I just don't like getting wasted?
At that point, I was just like, I think somebody should remain sober right now.
In the back of your head, like, this is North Korea we're in.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was... It did feel kind of surreal. And then it's just one of those things where it's like I kind of forgot about it, or not really forgot about it, but it didn't really feature in any of the stories that I was talking about the semester when I was telling my family or friends.
Really? They didn't? Oh, it's funny.
Like, and yeah, I would say, yeah, we went to North Korea. I don't think my dad knows this yet, actually.
I hope they all watch it and they get to know this deeper layer of Lei.
He knows the story.
Oh, wait, but, Lee. Now I was doing the thing with the spelling. Anyway.
So it's like, I would tell people, yeah, we went to North Korea, like, this is what we did, running into people who said that I speak like I'm from North Korea because I picked up my grandma's accent. but the specific part about singing karaoke drunk with these North Korean Communist Party members, that was a memory that kind of like fell off the side because people were more interested in hearing about how desolate it was and like what's the difference as soon as you cross the border from South Korea to North Korea. Like you're going through the DMZ, no man's land, and
what was that like? Isn't there minefields and
there was like that one bridge, obviously, that we went over.
Did you feel tense at all on the bridge? Like, I hope they got the memo we were coming through today.
Yeah. It was interesting because the DMZ, that no man's land, has become this very rich ecological sanctuary. There's so many bird species that thrive there because they don't need to walk on the ground. You know, they can just fly in and out. The flora and fauna like have thrived there. Like there are so many like flowers and ferns and shrubs, like everything. And, yeah,
every now and then a root, just an odd root, hits one of the mines. Oh, wow.
And so as we were going over, I remember they were saying, "All right, we're coming up on the border. Okay, it's coming," and there it is. Like that wooden fence post. Like you would expect something a lot more dramatic.
Yeah.
Like something more elaborate and like with fanfare and get your attention. Like, don't go past this border. Like you there's no return. You know, whatever. But no, it was a wooden fence post.
Like you're saying, probably don't don't pass this. Probably, you know.
Like every 10 meters, just another one. I'm like, okay. And then you get past this ecological zone, ecologically thriving zone, and then all of a sudden, that's when you realize, yep, we're in North Korea because everything is bare. Like the trees have been stripped of bark. The ground, the agriculture, anything that could be cultivated was just like down to the bedrock. I'm not sure that I'm using that term correctly, but you know, you see a cow with its ribs showing out grazing in a field, and what they're doing is just licking dirt. There is no grass to graze on. So this poor cow is just like nosing his way through dirt. The tree branches have been stripped to about 30, 40 feet because anything and everything that they could get their hands on to eat, to burn for warmth, to, you know, anything that could be useful in any way was taken. And so, yeah, just like driving through this countryside, seeing people in the fields, you're not allowed to take pictures. If they caught you taking a picture, they'd stand there and make you delete and probably format your entire drive. Like, this is back in 2006, so think about what digital cameras were like back in that age, before...
Back in that unknown, yeah.
Before the iPhone made
There's been a
its
crazy
debut.
amount of development in that short time.
Yeah.
I think about it.
So yeah, it was... And so, like, that's what I remember when I think about North Korea. So, those are the things I talk about.
That's definitely an interesting topic. Like, how does something like that even get maintained? I guess through a lot of lies. Maybe a big power like China needs to be supporting it. 'Cause it's just so crazy, because if the majority of people are getting screwed over, who's the one enforcing these rules? That's mind-blowing.
Personality cult that has grown around that family. I mean, Stalin did it. So, yeah, there's...
What's your grandma's story? When did she end up leaving?
She, like I said, she was born in Pyongyang. A matchmaker contacted her family to marry my grandfather.
Like a Mulan-esque matchmaker?
And he was Korean living in Japan. So he got sent from Japan back to Korea, married my grandmother. There was a lot going on in her life during the occupation, immediately during the war, immediately afterwards. World War II, immediately after that, and then the Korean Civil War. There's a fucking lot.
I fucking bet.
So, My mom's older sister was the first of all the kids. So she was born in Pyongyang as well in 1947. And at that point, my grandfather's father had moved from Japan back to Korea. And he was the one who felt like something was wrong, something was happening with the post-World War II Allied Soviet division of Korea, where Russia's, the same thing they did in Germany, where the Soviet Union said, we're going to control this part, and the Allied forces, you can have that part. And so there was tension on the peninsula of, authoritarian governments versus democratic ones. And so my great-grandfather saw that something was going on. He felt something was going on. And so he was the one who told my grandparents to take their baby girl and go south. Like, just go. Here's some money. Go. So they did. Not without some struggles. There were...
Just a couple.
Threats of getting caught, of...
so at this point, they already locked it down, Iron Curtain style, like you're not allowed to...
Not really, but they did have to make the journey at night in the dark. If my aunt started crying because she was 2 years old at this point, it was going to be a problem if they caught them, like send them back to the north. But it wasn't divided the way it is now. So there was still movement across the border, such as it was. And then my mom was born in Seoul. We're going to stick to Korean pronunciations.
Fuck yeah, please.
So she was born in Seoul. And then the next kid was born in Daegu, which is further south. So they were still refugees at that point. And then 2 more followed after that. And at some point they settled down in one of the towns right outside of Seoul, which at this point has been enveloped into the greater metropolitan area. So it's not really a separate town now. But so that's what Grandma went through. Part of what Grandma went through.
Oh yeah, right? That's not counting, I guess, the move to America, assuming she did that, and then...
all that stuff, her childhood growing up.
I have some people who are very close to me who've lived through the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and it's just... There's something that's so hard to wrap my head around. That guy's been doing sit-ups for a long time. There's been like 5 minutes of just nonstop. So anyway.
It's a good place to do it.
Yeah. And it's just so weird to think you could grow up, you could be a kid, you could live through a literal genocide, and then life goes on, right? Then you come to America, you still need to have a job, you still want to start a family, and all the struggles and trials and tribulations of that, right?
Yep.
And to think she could go through a world war, all the craziness that went on in Korea, and come here, and I'm sure there's a lot more struggle and love and joy, and it's crazy how many stories can be compacted into one life.
Yeah. I want to write it all down.
Yeah.
My aunt and my cousins on my dad's side, the American side, did that for my dad's parents, where writing down their stories, everything, stuff that they would tell us randomly, like that paratrooping story, like Grandpa making this comment about, like, why do you need to practice going parachuting when you need to do it right the first time? Stuff like that, like their entire life story. And luckily, they were able to do all that before my grandfather passed away. My grandmother already has, so anything that I would write down about her story would just be from memory, what I remember her telling me when I was like 7 years old. And then I can go ask my mom, like, did she ever talk about this, that, or the other thing? And Mom's just going to be like,
what's one of the most important things? Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes she'll tell me some things, but...
Oh, aren't those the best? When it's not really even asked for. Just for some reason, somehow, you get to this conversation, you get to see a whole new side of a grandparent or even a parent, a side that you never really saw to them before.
Yeah.
That's cool. You can have this identity all mapped out for a person and not realize how many others they have. Lying in mystery.
Like my other grandma, my dad's mom, how do I remember her? It's like typical grandma, like baking cookies, hosting Christmas dinner, like with the ham on the table, stuff like that. And it turns out that when she was in her late 20s, I guess, she and her friends went down to Florida for a 2-week vacation to visit another friend, I guess. And after a couple days, let's say 4 or 5 days, they were like, okay, well, we're kind of bored. We've seen everything that there is to see around here. Let's go to Cuba. And this is like 1947.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she was in her late 20s, yeah. 1947, something like that.
So
like
we don't hate Cuba yet, right?
Right, yeah. The revolution didn't happen until like 59, something like that. So yeah, it was literally, they were like, yeah, we're bored, let's go to Cuba. So they got on a plane that day, went to Cuba for a couple days, and there's a picture of her. Her and her 2 friends that went at the sea wall, so you can like see the ocean, or I guess it is the Caribbean Sea behind them. I'm not sure, where on Cuba, like which body of water was behind them. But yeah, so that's what they did. They stayed there for a couple days and went back to Florida, finished out their vacation, and then came back here to Philly.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. You see cute little old grandma who... No, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. Like, what story had I given my grandma? How did I view her? Like, what kind of character was she in my brain? But turns out, like, yeah, she was the type to just hop on a flight to
Grandma had a wild side.
Because she was bored. Even something as simple as, like, seeing a picture of her in her bikini, and I'm like, oh, Mom. When was this? It's like, hey, you grew up in, like, whatever decade it was. And so, like, as a kid, you're just sitting there thinking, like, oh, everybody, like, older people, back in the old days, they were very conservative. Like, they
always wearing prim, covering all parts of their body clothing.
Like, of course, bikinis were an invention in the 1980s. Like,
then just rewind to her drinking and dancing in Cuba.
Something like that. Like, having a glass of wine or something. I'm like, I've never seen you, like, pour yourself a glass of wine or something. Like, what?
And smoke a cigarette or something. I thought you just make cookies and, your cute cuddly grandma.
Right, yeah.
That's weird to think as we get older, if we end up becoming grandparents, the wild stories of our youth that just won't be seen, obviously, at first glance.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah, if I ever have grandkids, I'm sitting there, like, doddering old 90-year-old, like, drool coming out my mouth. And then I'll just, like, look at my grandkid and be like, did I ever tell you about that time I jumped off a bridge? Rope. Yeah.
Was just sitting starry-eyed. What's one of the coolest or most important things you've ever heard from your grandparents?
Overall, they raised us. They raised my dad, my aunt, and then in turn, all us grandkids. With a very not healthy, I'm going to say it this way, conservation mindset, where they were big bird watchers.
Okay.
And from there, it branched out. Well, actually, Pop-Up was the ornithologist. My mom picked up the hobby because she liked to travel and he wanted to travel to go look at birds, and she was like, all right, I'll go with you. So from there, like, oh, birds need a particular habitat in order to thrive, and so we need to, conserve the forests, make sure that there are grasslands and woodlands and wetlands for the different animals that are out there. And so they raised us to understand that everything is connected and that everything needs to be cared for. People and creatures and the earth.
I love how they can show you that, kind of like we were talking about earlier, through action. Not necessarily sitting you down, giving you a lecture about why you need to take care of, but just in action, right? Taking care of the birds, and just naturally, if you want to see them coming to your yard, you got to have food out in a beautiful environment, maybe a little bird bath. You got to take care of the bird bath, though, if you really want them to.
Yep, yeah. So it's not just like sitting down and cutting a check to the DCNR.
Is that some conservation thingy?
Yeah, Department of Conservation of Natural Resources. Yeah, so not just that, but yeah, actually like going out into the world and showing us what the world is like and what we need to do in order, like, it's here, let's enjoy it, you know, and this is how you can enjoy it, kind of thing. So,
man, I can't wait to go. I haven't been out in nature in a while. I've gone out in parks, but there's still so much touched by man nearby. I need to go out into the wilderness. Oh, that's such a different feeling. Growing up as like a suburban kid, you don't know what kind of wits you need to have about you when you're going out into the woods. Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, what's that frog? Oh, it's...
Oh.
Is it... Oh, wait. Would a frog be venomous? No, it would be poisonous.
What's the difference?
Something is poisonous if you ingest it and it kills you. Something is venomous if
like
it bites you and kills you. Yes.
Gotcha. God, I hope I don't have to worry about frogs being venomous. I've definitely heard of the poison dart frog.
Like if you touch a frog and then like you lick your hand, it's like, I guess that would be poisonous.
But yeah, you just see cool, cute red or blue frog. Oh, let me go grab it. Oh, look at what I got. Put it down.
Right, like, ooh, that's a pretty mushroom. Don't touch it.
Literally, one of the first times I was walking up by myself in State Park, I was only like 100 feet into it, but I had this fear come over me like, oh, there are animals out here. I have nothing to protect myself. I see like this one deer with big old antlers, and I'm like, if that thing runs at me, I have nothing. I want to grab a stick and poke at it. It has spears on its head. And so I went the next day and got bear mace. For my
Yeah, I was going to say, I still get confused. Like, I cannot remember when you see a bear. Like, if it's a black bear, do you play dead or do you try to make yourself big and scary?
Because one of those is very aggressive and they're gonna charge.
And it's like, oh, don't climb a tree because one of them is a good climber, so they can, and like the other one is really huge, so.
The other one as if there's only two. And then you have those advice for two, but then they're like 50 other kind.
That is the best piece of advice my pop-up gave me. If you're out in the woods, make sure you have a friend that you can outrun, because if you get chased by a bear, you can trip them and save yourself.
I'm only gonna go out into the woods with people I don't like from now on, but I'll convince them I like them.
I don't know how much he was joking about that.
That's one of those ha ha ha.
But. Like, okay, Bubba.
Oh, that's the worst. I have prosthetic legs, so I'm always the slowest in the group. When I'm walking with my friends, I'm like, okay, if we see a mountain lion, like, you guys have to stick with, we gotta stay together, guys.
Well, with mountain lions, that actually works. Like, you all, like, get together and, like, you all, like, create a giant creature together.
Like, that's the thing that's tiny enough. You feel, well, you can take it, but a bear, that might just take out 4 of us. Strapping young men might not make much of a difference. See, that's what I can see good arguments for having guns, right? Like when you're going out with a 1,000-pound beast that lives nearby. I don't want a pea shooter if I see that thing.
I feel like I need to turn around and ask you some of these questions as well. Like,
yeah,
what's the best piece of advice your grandparents ever gave you?
Inadvertently, not through words like you were saying with the conservation, but with my grandpa, he was very racist for a while, and he disowned my mom for several years into their marriage, and I got to know him. They made up at some point, and I got to know him as a little kid, so I didn't really understand all the tensions that came before, but to me, he was always just this great, loving, cuddly old grandpa, you know. And the last time I ever saw him while he was still lucid, we're in the hospital. I'm giving him a hug to say goodbye. And I'm giving him a hug, and I hear this like laughing, this high-pitched laughing. And I look up, and he's crying. And this is the first time I ever remember seeing a grown man cry. It was one of the strangest experiences. I was so stunned by it. And he asks me, "Do you love me?" And I forget what I said. I was just so shocked after that. I think I said yes. But the point being, he taught me how much a person can change in one lifetime. Because you'll hear the adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but apparently you kind of can. Apparently he can turn from someone who I don't exist to, right? Like I'm shunning, I'm zero to him, I'm nothing, to someone who he loves so deeply, it literally brings him to tears. And so yeah, he taught me how much someone can change.
Nice.
That so something like that.
That is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that I've thought about in terms of like, in this day and age, you see a lot of like scrolling through Instagram, let's say, TikTok, Facebook, like pick your medium, and advice from people to help with like self-help advice. And so you see a lot of people who say like, does this person bring you joy? No, then cut them out of your life. You know, toxic relationship here, or, you know, gaslighting here, narcissism over there. Like, get rid of these people. Like, if you are friends with a racist person, like, they're not part of your echo chamber, like, get rid of them. You know, that whole thing. And so it makes me think about, like, when do you consider somebody worth fighting for versus somebody that just is not ever going to contribute any value or positive meaning to your life, and it's time to cut them loose, let them go. And so in that situation, like family, there is an obligation that people feel towards their family, which I'm not saying that that's why you would be more inclined to give this guy a chance. Like, he did come around. But if that were not your grandfather, if that were a family friend, would you be inclined to say, to forgive him and say, yeah, people can change? Or you just be like, you're still an idiot. Kind of thing. It just makes me wonder about the nature of connections that you have with people, the types of relationships you can have with them, what you're willing to forgive, work through, work past.
Everyone in life is gonna hurt you. You just need to find the ones worth suffering for. That's a Bob Marley quote. And someone worth suffering for. Because it strikes me, my mom, well, more like my grandpa, cut her off, but maybe there are points in life where someone, it's right to cut them off now, but that doesn't mean years down the line they can be reintroduced. They've changed to a degree where it's now okay to keep them in your life. And then I also have these stories running through my head of friendships that you could call very much, very, very toxic, but it was the fact that the person kept fighting for them, even though they kept hurting them, even though it seemed like they really didn't want them in their life. Hold on. I gotta... Because as I'm saying this, I'm recognizing that the toxic person in these instances, there was a bit of dissonance they had, a bit of, fuck you, get out of my life, I want to hurt you. But when they try to hurt the person, you can tell they're kind of holding back. That they're not full throttle, I'm trying to actually decimate you. I'm just trying to maybe push you away for some deep internal reason because I just feel like I'm not worth it, or something to that effect. But if I just kept fighting for you, eventually it clicks to this person that, oh no, they actually love me. They're not lying to me like all the other people in my life. And because you fought so much, I'm ready to change and I'm willing to change. And in a lot of those instances, the person who fought for them had to fight tooth and nail, like push themselves to the very limit. And sometimes That's a tough question. Who's really worth fighting, pushing yourself to the limit for in the attempt to pull them out of a dark place? Because I've had personally a good amount of problem with that in my own life, taking on friendships where I could see they're in a dark place and I really want to help them. But at a certain point, I had so many people in my life like that, I was being dragged down. I was kind of sinking because there is a lot of truth to the adage, the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with in your life are the people you'll most be like. And if you surround yourself with so many people like that, eventually you'll become, well, you could get overwhelmed. And so a lot of that maybe comes down to just truly knowing yourself, not falling prey to these dogmatic beliefs of, no, I always have to fight for this person no matter what, or I should cut them off immediately. Having yourself open to testing, keeping an open mind, change your beliefs, being very honest with yourself even when it really hurts. And then placing your bets as you have to in life and just hoping for the best.
Like all of life is just trial and error.
A lot of it. Oh, for damn sure. A lot of it. The scientific process, it's funny how reliable that seems to be, but how little people actually use it in their own life. They'll use some equivalent of testing it out.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do more scientific tests of these questions. I don't know how the hell you would do that, though. I'm going to have this friend who's toxic, and I'll test this friendship, keep notes of it, my emotional levels as it goes along. Who would be the control friend? I don't know. I heard a funny saying that if you take all the wisdom of all the wise people and admirable people, eventually they all cancel themselves out.
I think I've heard that.
Uh-huh.
And I think yeah.
There's so
true.
much truth to that. And then I hear the next memory come to my head of, no, these these rules of thumb, these words of wisdom, they're tools. And you have to keep your eye open to when is it time to take this tool out of the toolbox and apply it here? When is it time to bird on the camera? Don't poop on my camera, please. Yeah, get the picture. Ah, cool.
Is that a podcast first?
Yes, that might end up being... Yes, that is a podcast first. That might end up being the cover photo for the podcast.
Nice.
Uh-huh. Please send me the pictures you got.
Do that now.
Yeah, cool. Ooh, while you're doing that, I'm going to check something. Yeah, life being a great collection of placing bets.
Yes. So I'm just looking at all your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you travel around with.
Yeah. I need to get some really good camouflage in my van for sure, so no one knows. Mm-hmm.
Nobody yoinks any of this?
Say again?
So that nobody yoinks any of this?
Oh my God, yeah. There was the mild paranoia I had that someone's just going to grab the camera and just start running away while we're sitting here. I'm like, I can't catch you. Just like, well, enjoy.
It's been a while since I've done any running.
You're good. We could just throw some words their way.
It's very interesting to see the play of the sun on this tree here, where like it's so dark on this side and then so light. Like, yeah, that one right there.
Oh, that's a beautiful view.
Yeah.
I forget sometimes, being indoors too much, just how recharging it is to look at nature. A flowing river, the sun bouncing off trees, the clouds. Oh, what's one of your favorite things to look at?
One of my favorite things to look at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a couple things. I'm going to go for the less sentimental ones.
Cool.
One of them are bumblebees.
Oof.
Or honeybees.
Mm-hmm. Do you get up close?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite memories is actually when I was in my friend's garden, and there was a bumblebee one of its wings was damaged, so she was not flying anymore. So she was going to die. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to try to make this better for you. So I just like I deliberately found some flowers in my friend's garden that had a whole bunch of pollen, and then just like stuck them in a bowl and then just put the bee in there. Just like scooped her up and put her in. And I'd been eating a peach. And so the peach juices had dried on my finger. And so I was holding her, and she was on this fingertip, and she sticks out her, I don't even know how to pronounce it, proboscis.
Is it a tongue,
Yes.
sort of? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like I have pictures of her just like licking at my finger, like trying to get the nectar. Yeah, so then I put her in the bowl with the flowers. So I love bees. I love how fat and rotund they get, and like covered in like little furs, and then like all the pollen that's on the fur. And the other one, almost all my friends know that if I'm ever in a bad mood, all they need to do is show me video of ducks or geese shaking their butts. Like they come out of the water and like they shake their butt to dry off. I am instantly just giggling about that. Like I love watching ducks just like beep, 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 beep.
Still the cutest things in nature.
Yes. I was at, I think it was Elmwood Park Zoo, or the zoo out in Hershey that does North American animals. I think it was the one in Hershey. And I recall, like, we're just like at this pond and we're looking at these turkeys and these geese and these ducks, and they're just like splishing in the pond, and they come out. And I probably stood there for a good 15 minutes just watching them shake their butts, trying to dry off. Like, literally.
That's better than watching any meme on the internet. IRL booty shaking. Now I kind of want to. Do bumblebees not sting? Are they the ones?
They do, if they feel threatened by you. The male drone workers, there are certain species where, they do not have stingers. So if you pick one up and you notice that there's no stinger, it's probably a male. Whereas a female, as soon as she stings, then the stinger, it's one-time use. So the stinger rips out, and then she dies after
fucking
that.
hardcore.
So if it doesn't have a stinger and it's crawling around looking healthy, it's a male.
Gotcha.
If it has no stinger and it's like dead or dying, it was female, probably.
That's this is more of a weird personal question. How does that kill the bee? Do you know? Seem to know a lot about. Huh? What a weird.
No, I feel like, okay, I need to go look this up now.
Yeah, me too. No, I can't believe I've never actually dug into that.
Like, you know all these facts, but you don't delve into what makes these facts true. So, like, why?
Maybe it's connected to their. I don't know. I'm just gonna start pulling things out of my ass, but
Yeah.
I love the fact that you have the archetypal Mother Nature hand to maybe the societal, more tough, masculine element in old mythological archetypes. Like literally the willingness to pick up a bee. I would probably be so afraid because I would see it as danger, right? I would see it as this thing that's going to be aggressive. I would see it as more of a battle element. But to have that sort of the hand of nurturing, the hand of flourishing that can pick it up, so you actually get to experience the beauty of a bee licking your finger.
That's
I need some more of that in myself.
Yeah, I mean, I hate spiders. I've learned to tolerate them a bit more, depending on, like a jumping spider in my garden on my flower petals. Okay, it doesn't freak me out. Tarantula, but like most bugs, I'm just like, no, ew, gross. Like cockroaches, centipedes, house centipedes, whatever. I'm just like, bleh. But
something might be wrong with you if you find a centipede cute.
Yeah. None of that.
It's like horror movie fuel for days.
But yeah, like bees, praying mantis.
Ooh.
Yeah, like there several times I've been out walking, and I just like see a mantis on the pavement, and I'm like, you're gonna get stepped on or squished or something. So like I'll just like scoop it up and find some greenery to put them somewhere, or like a caterpillar. And yeah, like people looking at me like, you're very brave. I'm like, mantis. Like, it's a
But what if it does like that thing? Or the caterpillar, that one I think I'm
like
strong enough to
scorpion,
pick up.
I would not.
Ooh.
Unless I pick it up by the tail, but even then I'm like,
Don't they
I
have
would reconsider.
pinchies too?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never encountered a scorpion, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like cicadas. There's the 13-year and the 17-year.
Oh, I ate some this year. Or last year. They were delicious. They were fried, not just like out plucking off the branch. I'm not that. I'm not that legit. But no, they're pretty delicious. They taste kind of like little fried shrimp poppers or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So I love cicadas. Like last time we saw them in like 2004, I think it was, down in DC. My best friend like walks out of the house with a can of Raid in each hand. She's like, all right, like
go time.
She like could not stand all the swarming, and I was sitting there like trying to catch them like fireflies. Like, ooh, come here. Like, ooh, you come here.
Oh, that's something I haven't done forever. Catching fireflies. That's a magical
cool.
part.
Last week, walking home from yoga, seeing all the fireflies along the trail. It was what, like 10 or something? Yeah, just like, come here, my pretty.
Yes, exactly. Do you ever listen to lo-fi?
Yes, I try to. So like if I go in Spotify and I search lo-fi, like some of the songs that come up aren't necessarily what I want to be listening to, or like they don't seem like lo-fi.
But you know the background pictures to lo-fi? I feel like that is optimal life in a lot of ways. Just the background to a lo-fi song. Yeah. Just the calm, Studio Ghibli-esque life. Catching some fireflies and watching the sunset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of funny. People almost never look at me in the city, but I've noticed that now that I have the camera set up, I'm noticing more people look and smile than I've like ever experienced in a city before. I'm gonna just have to do that for the joy of seeing people smile at me.
It's like what you were saying earlier about people watching. I have yet to see you drop a smile. Like in the 2 conversations that we have had.
You've yet to see me drop a smile?
Drop the smile. Like you constantly have the smile on your face. Like
the
whole time you're talking to me. Like,
that's funny. I haven't noticed that. What would be my resting bitch face? Hold on, because I can get a good one going.
If I start laughing, see, that's what's going to happen.
Because I look at myself in the mirror sometimes like, oh, that looks scary. Then people don't recognize the bubbliness that exists inside from time to time when I just have a...
Yeah, that. About to say that pensive look. I'm not sure if you were going for thoughtful.
No, that's just when I relax. That's just like relaxed face. No, okay. I was tensing up a little bit to add some sternness to it. Relaxed.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, so I said I don't do a lot of editing, but a lot of these pauses I'll probably edit out.
Okay.
But I feel like silence is an underrepresented part of a good conversation a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree. Like for other people listening to it, yeah, you don't want to have like too many pauses, but yeah, it's just one of those things. Like Uma Thurman's line in Pulp Fiction, where she was like, you know, when you're comfortable with somebody, you can just sit there and shut the fuck up. Yeah, that's... Why
do we feel this need to ceaselessly just be chattering on and on and on and
like,
on?
Awkward silences are one thing. Comfortable silences, that's what you need in your relationships with people. In addition to the, yeah, we can talk about anything. We can talk about everything. We can talk about nothing. We can also sit there and not talk. So.
I struggle with that sometimes, especially with the podcast. How much should I just let silence? Let there be silence. I guess I need to keep my senses perked up for when there's the awkward silence. Like, oh, okay, you gotta say something. This is weird.
Next question.
Yeah. Okay, one of the final questions what's one of your favorite pieces of art?
Favorite pieces of art?
And I'll get real broad with it. Let's see if that's useful. And if it's not, I'll specify it more. But art meaning it could be a movie, it could be a song, it could be a painting, a picture, etc. One of your favorite pieces of art.
Yeah, that can be, the word art can mean so many different things. And so as soon as you said it, what pops into my head is a couple of paintings by a particular artist. If I can call anybody my favorite artist, it is him. Lorenzo Monaco was an Italian monk in the 14 or 1500s. Like, I forget where or when he lived. But there are a couple paintings of his that I've seen. The first time I saw it was in the Uffizi in Florence. And then a couple months later, I was in London at the National Gallery, and I was walking through one of the rooms, and I saw out of the corner of my eyes just like the colors of the painting, and I turned and I looked, and I'm like, that looks like Lorenzo Monaco, and I go closer, and it was. It's like, oh, like I can recognize him now. So I would say that one of them was the Annunciation, and the, what is it? When the Magi visit Virgin Mary, or
now I want to look these up.
yeah, yes. So as far as like paintings go, those are my favorites. What Lorenzo Monaco has painted. But yeah, to look at it in a broader sense, The Fall, Tarsem Singh's film from like 2008, I think it was 2007, 2008, something like that. It is a movie about, it's a story within a story. So it's set in the 1920s out in California, where a stuntman is in a hospital having sustained an injury on the set of a Hollywood movie. And also in that hospital is an 8-year-old girl from Romania, an immigrant, doesn't understand English that well. But he starts telling her a story. And so that story, the frame story, the cinematography, everything was just amazing. The movie itself was shot in about 27 different countries, because Tarsem Singh would go on location with the actors to get these scenes set all over India, China, the Gobi Desert, the Galapagos Islands probably, because one of the characters was Darwin. And so I just found it amazing. Like, it's just such a visual treat. And now that I say that, I'm thinking, okay, audio. What works of music do I love? Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite composers, and I know a lot of people say that. Serenade for Strings in C minor, C major, can't remember which one it was, but Serenade for Strings, the Adagio, the second movement, is amazing. And his composition, None But the Lonely Hearts, is also one of my favorites. Those two of his works are my absolute favorites. I've done visual, I've done audio. Another work of art, as far as like what? Smell? Taste?
Are there smell work of art? No, I guess a candle maybe? Or like a certain incense, but we don't have to go for smell unless you could think of a really cool...
Petrichor.
What's that?
It is the scent of asphalt after a rain. Like, yeah, there's an actual word for it.
Cool.
Obviously, it was made up like once asphalt was invented, but petrichor is the smell of rain. So you have to wonder, like, how many flowers have you sniffed? Like, my walk to get home from this location takes about 30 minutes, but I can make it an hour because I will stop and sniff every other flower that I see. I love sniffing flowers. a work of art in terms of like a chef who's prepared a meal for you, or mom's home cooked meal. When you go home for New Year's or your birthday or something, she'll make you something special.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that a work of art? I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
It's a labor of love, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
She's got all the critters.
Uh-huh. That's been a theme in the past few that I've done outside. At least once in the episode, someone will stop to just look at the bug crawling around on their microphone.
If I see a spotted lanternfly, I will kill it. So if I just knock something over trying to kill a bug, it's a specific type of bug.
Uh-huh.
That is invasive.
Yes, I've heard that it's best to kill them when you see them. Mm. Although I don't know how effective that is as a method for taking care of them, but do you think it would be actually effective? So I was having this discussion with my friend the other day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously you want to find the eggs where they have the sacs stuck to the tree trunks and whatnot, but killing the individual ones just gives you a perverse sense of satisfaction of just squashing the damn thing.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you do it with a rubber band, like shooting them with rubber bands. I went on a hunt with my friend before. It's a morally questionable pastime, but goddamn was it fun.
I like to catch them and just stick them in a cup or something and just let them suffocate.
Jesus Christ. Okay, that one.
Because I can catch them.
Uh-huh.
Like when you go to slap it, it'll jump away, but you can just very quickly scoop them up. And I find it easier to catch them than to slap them, so yeah.
Super for suffocation.
Then they remain intact. You can rip the wings off and you can make jewelry out of them.
Jesus Christ.
The wings are beautiful.
That's
They're very
true.
pretty.
They are very pretty.
I'm not saying you could wallpaper your house with them or something, but
with as many as we've seen, you might.
What kind of craft projects could you do with those wings?
That's true. Make some nice earrings and necklaces or whatnot.
Yeah.
Could you do something to preserve the wings? Like harden them or somehow? I don't know. But with your art pieces, what were the paintings of? Ooh, I never looked them up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we have with the movie, I get the sense of wanderlust. With the travel around.
And colors and just like I said, it was the visual part. What I remember of that is just how visually appealing the different scenes were. There was one where the bandit is talking about his twin brother who is wrapped up in a shroud because he has just been killed. And so he's in the shroud, and then there's the banner that's going up. There's a wooden frame, just random wooden frame in the middle of a desert. And so the shroud is the banner, it's going up. And so you see the blood from the twin brother starting to seep up, and it's traveling up the banner. And so just something, yes, it seems kind of morbid, but something
still.
like that where it's just
wow.
Stunning. The whirling dervishes in the temple in India.
What's a whirling dervish?
The guys in Turkey with the white robes and the fez who spin around.
Oh,
around,
yes,
around,
yes,
around,
yes.
around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's supposed to be, divine. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but they're meant to be going into a state of ecstasy with that, become closer to God. Or find God.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. An endless spinning, entering that sort of no mind space when there's just no mind.
There was a shaman in that movie in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually the scene where he's introduced actually was what made me become really invested in the movie, because up until that point it was just a movie. But then I see this one scene with the shaman who was meant to be a reference to Australian Aboriginals. And just that dance, that worship that they were doing, and he's on this altar, and there are tattoos starting to spread around his body to become a map for the story's protagonist to use that map to go find the princess, whatnot. And so it was just that dance, that rhythmic, that worship that was going on, and he's and a tree is sprouting from him.
The dance of life.
Yeah. You need to watch this movie.
Sounds fucking good. The Fall, you say?
Yes.
Cool.
By Tarsem Singh. The
and
main
please
star
type in the artist you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It just falls into the river.
Let's not do that.
So the beauty of the world,
Yes. There you
the
go.
great diversity and the beauty, even in the saddest parts of it.
Yep. Nope.
Okay, and what were the specific
Shoot. There was one where the visit of the Magi, I think.
Yep. Yep.
And
Adorazione dei Magi. I'm
yes,
imagining.
Adorazione dei Magi. And I want to say the Annunciation was the other one, where Mary ascended to heaven. Yeah. And what I remember about those paintings was just how pink they were. Because then it just made me think about like what sort of pigments were available to them then, and did he paint these originally to be pink, or did they fade, or like did the colors change over time? So like, do we know what color they were originally?
Is it
I
this
don't
one?
Yeah. I've not used an Android in so long. Where I'm
You're good.
Wait, how do I hit the back?
They really
button?
become like foreign objects.
Yeah.
I feel the same with Apple products.
I might have to find it and send it to you later, because
You're good. Is the Magi supposed to be Jesus?
the three wise men who visited Jesus at his birth.
There's such beautiful art
Yes.
in the days of medieval times. Is
Yeah.
this Renaissance or is this still in Dark Ages? 1394.
Yeah, I would say that would be Gothic. But speaking of, got it.
We got a spotted lanternfly.
A dead one.
Yeah.
Oh, its guts are pink. I'm used to like the green ones that shoot out of the older ones.
Oh, so is that a baby one?
Yes, this nymph or
You savage. You just killed a baby.
Yeah, it's dead. Are we still live?
Huh?
Said, are we still live?
Oh, that'd be great if this was a live showing. I don't think I'll ever do, well, maybe every now and then. So let's see, you have a sort of classical soul. The classical music,
Yeah.
the medieval art
Yeah.
mixed with the love for the visual stunning aspects of life and the diversity of it.
Yeah, I mean, you throw in, opera and ballet and whatnot. And so, yeah, I do get a lot of people, like, thinking that I'm being pretentious about some things. But at the same time, like, yeah, give me, like, a good lo-fi playlist and I will love it. Like, play some Duran Duran or The Clash, The Cure, you know. My knowledge of pop music probably stops at the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And then beyond that, I'm just like, I don't know what the kids are talking about these days.
You don't know about XXS Tentacion?
Yeah.
Or I'm just
I heard he's a terrible person. Like,
So you are a little hip. You hear
I mean,
some
I'm
of
on
the
Reddit.
I got you. So a combination of the beautiful travel, love of the classical, a love of the family, motherly cooking.
And, I mean, yeah, still enjoying the lowbrow entertainment.
A good Family Guy episode or a fart joke here and
You
there.
know, the earlier seasons, same thing with this episode.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Love Letterkenny.
That's the Canadian, like
Yep.
Trailer Park Boys equivalent.
Yes.
Wait, no, Trailer Park Boys is also
Yes.
Canadian. Yes. Fuck yeah. Ooh, okay. This popped in my head. So one more thing. Dark. What would be a dark art? That's something that portrays. I guess you kind of talked about it with the twin brother and the blood going up the banner. Do you have any other equivalents to that of a very dark, beautiful work of art? Maybe specifically in song. You know what? I'll say in song. I'll narrow it down.
in song. Oh man, at the risk of opening up a little bit too much.
I'll leave that up to you. I'll edit it out if you like afterwards.
When I was in high school, I loved Linkin Park. Their first album had come out, it was winning all these awards. It was top of the charts for like a full calendar year. And so I, being a 16-year-old girl, who was trying to prove her punkness and her rock, like rejecting anything and everything feminine.
So were you goth or emo?
At that time, I was just a weird kid.
Okay.
Like I did get into my goth phase in college when I met some other people who, like, we would actually go to the goth clubs and whatnot. But in high school, like, I was drama company's stage crew. Like, not one of the actors, but I was in stage crew, and that's like a whole different.
Oh, I've dabbled in stage crew.
So I felt I really like their songs. To this day, you play that album, I will sing along to every single one. Have not forgotten a word of it. But there was one song that came out more recently. Like, I got their second album, and then I kind of became less obsessed with them, like fell off the Linkin Park bandwagon. So, like, I knew that they were in the soundtrack for one of the Transformers movies. And so there was one song that came out, and I'm trying to remember how it goes. And I remember listening to that after Chester Bennington had killed himself. And I want to say that song came out probably a good year or two, maybe even 5. Like, I wasn't familiar with their discography at that point, so I have no idea how long before his suicide that song came out. But listening to that song after the fact, I was just like, this is it. Like, everybody knew that he struggled with mental health, that he did have depression, but how many people knew that it was that bad, that he was going to be struggling to the point where he's got how many kids, he's got a wife, he's got this band, they're touring, and he's going to end it. And so listening to that song afterwards, I just keep going back to those lyrics. I'm like, he told us. Like, it's right there. It's all laid out right there. And it was one of those things where, like, my depressiveness first manifested at the age of 16. So as I was, in high school, like, trying to figure out life itself, like, struggling with my mental health for the first time, not knowing what any of it means. And I find this band and going into the online forums and thinking that I, like, connecting with people from all over the world and thinking, like, oh, these are friends. Like, they may be online, but these are my friends, like, people who understand me. And the day the news broke, the day that Chester Bennington killed himself, was the day that I had picked up my first bottle of antidepressants. Like, finally, 15, 16 years later, after I first realized that I was depressed, I finally said, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to get help. I'm going to seek therapy, and I'm going to really try to work on this. And so doctor, psychiatrist wrote the prescription. I waited a couple days to pick it up. Like, it was filled. I was getting calls from the pharmacy saying it was ready. And I went to pick it up. And on the way home, with this bottle in the front seat, I'm listening to the radio, and that's when it was announced that Chester had killed himself. It was like, fuck. Like, to me, it was poignant. Like, I'm not sure that I could explain it to anybody to make them understand just, like, holy shit, like, this guy was opening up about his struggles. I felt like I was struggling through a lot. 16-year-old girl in suburbia. Like, what the hell was I struggling with? You know?
I mean,
like, but the fact that it kept coming back, no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing throughout the years, 16 years later, I finally decided, okay, I'm going to do something about this. And here we are. Like, so I would say that song was it. Like, that is the darkest work of musical art. Having an idea of what was going through his head as he was writing it, as every time he performed it, recording or live. So, that'll be it.
That is quite poignant.
What? Oh.
Thank you for being on, Lee.
Sure. Yeah. I did like this conversation.
Me too.
So, yeah.
Oh. Wow.
That's good.
It's it's like you shared a part of. I think you said it perfectly, and I can't feel what you felt, but I think you did justice to the the connection you felt there.
That's what art is, right? Like, trying to evoke an emotion in people, and holy shit is an emotion, right?
Yes, it is. It most certainly is.
Yeah. You good? You okay?
Yes.
Do you need to decompress, debrief, or
yeah.
anything? I don't know what to say.
And even though you were 16, I mean, like you said about him, he had riches, family, a successful band, and you might say, oh, what do you have to complain about? But clearly there was something so powerful that it was worth dying for.
Yeah. And I think going back to the first part is, like, having that empathy for people. Like, yeah, like, I can understand that maybe, like, one of the Kardashians is depressed. Like, I can understand that. Like, so many people are making fun of them and saying, like, oh, what do you have to complain about, like, yeah. But mental health, it's a serious thing, and it needs to be taken seriously by everybody. And it's not just, oh, I'm broke, I'm sad. Like, there's more to it than that. And just having sympathy, compassion for other people just feeling like shit for no reason. It's just, you don't need to make them feel worse by telling them they have no reason to feel terrible. Yeah.
That is.
Is that still picking up?
No, I think so. That is something I still want to add to the podcast, because that's a weird thing that seems to get tacked on to depression when you seem like you should be living a good life. When everyone tells you you're in a first world country, it's developed, you have a good family, all that jazz. Right. So what do you have to complain about?
Yeah, but
there's, I think, an underestimation of the power of depression, anxiety.
Yeah, stress and loneliness and fear. So many different things that can affect different things, and sometimes it's just like you can't control it. You can't just snap out of it. You can't tell yourself, I've got it good, so
so just feel good, just snap. Yeah.
Like, that's not how this works. That is absolutely not how this works. And so
there's some depression where it's a behavioral thing, right? Like, change these things and then you'll feel better if you behave differently. And then there's times where it's the equivalent to diabetes, where, you're not just gonna say, man up, you don't need your insulin. Like, no, you're gonna die if you don't have take your fucking insulin shot. You need to take the medicine. Yeah, there's a weird stigma around mental health that I noticed when we were growing up. Almost as if you're a bad person if you're sad and you can't just find a way to be happy, or you're anxious or lonely, like you're saying, and you can't just snap your fingers and feel better. Yeah. there's definitely that should probably change.
I agree. Definitely agree.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes it can be helped. You just find a dog, and just like cuddle with them,
Yes.
and you're good for about half an hour, and you just cuddle them again. You're good for another half hour.
And if in that half an hour you can get some work done so you can pay your bills and just dog, computer,
Yes.
then you're figuring stuff out.
Yes.
Man, this is a quote that it seems like it's one of the most important quotes of our time, that we can put people on the moon. We can create nuclear bombs. The internet can talk to people from thousands of miles away in the snap of a finger. But making people happy, right, doggos, happy, strong, and healthy, we still don't seem to have that figured out en masse. Yeah. I've definitely heard that that's the war of the age. That the great war of today is the war of mental health. And maybe war is the wrong way to conceptualize it. That I could definitely see that being true.
Yeah.
But one of the problems that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
Especially if you could consider, like, if people in power don't consider mental health a great thing or an important thing, and their mental health starts to slip up. When you look at Hitler and the history of it, it definitely seems like he was a pretty insane, like technically insane person. Like if there was just some mental health implemented there, probably could have saved a lot of catastrophe.
Yeah.
How to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. I need to get going, actually. Not to cut this off, but
Yeah.
I just realized it's like 8:30. My friend needs
Doggo.
to Have a good time. So yeah.
Yes.